So the United States of America is the largest donor for Ukraine, and Washington has provided at least about $100 billion worth of humanitarian, financial and most importantly, military weapons since the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war. And now the Ukrainian president is in the US Capitol. He's in fact at the US Congress, where Volodymyr Zelensky is facing some very skeptical Republicans who are threatening to cut off the massive military aid to his country. Now, Volodymyr Zelensky wants to reassure his American backers that Kiev can actually win the war, contrary to reports that are coming in from the battlefield. While Zelensky has made these claims, the House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has slammed the Ukrainian president. He has said that Volodymyr Zelensky, is he elected to the Congress? Is he the president there? And he's further added that he has questions regarding the accountability of the money that the United States of America has been spending on Ukraine's war effort, while also asking as to what his plan for victory actually is. Meanwhile, the House Speaker has also declined to convene a forum for the Ukrainian president where he would have wanted to address the members of the House. So far, more than $100 billion of American taxpayers' money has been pumped into the Ukraine war. An estimated $43 billion has been pumped in terms of direct weapon supplies that the Americans have made for the Ukrainians. And this has been approved by the Congress. However, the hard-right factions who dominate the Republican Party are now beginning to ask some pretty difficult questions. And they are stating that Americans should now stop funding the Ukraine war. Now, what could make Zelensky even more jittery is the fact that Donald Trump, was seeking a return to the White House in 2024, has frequently expressed his admiration for the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Zelensky won't be making any televised speech before the lawmakers. Instead, Zelensky started by meeting the Republican Speaker of the House Representatives, Kevin McCarthy. And he, remember, is facing a sort of a rebellion and is trying really hard to keep a lid on the internal party squabbling over American spending on Ukraine. Now, arriving right after another overnight wave of deadly missile attacks on his country, Zelensky has said on social media that obtaining better American air defense systems is going to be his top priority at the US Capitol. But to give us more perspective in terms of what, of course, is playing out at this moment as Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, is in the United States of America, we are being joined in by our correspondent, Susan Tehran, who's tracking all the details. She's joining us live from New York. Susan, this is a crucial visit for Volodymyr Zelensky, and this has, of course, come in the backdrop of the Republicans now asking some pretty hard questions on why the United States of America should keep funding the Ukrainian war effort. Tell us what's happening there.
Yeah, the Ukrainian president arrived in Washington, D.C., leaving here in New York after addressing the United Nations General Assembly. Of course, here in New York, he also had skeptics in his audience from world leaders who have either been on the fence or have leaned towards Russia in supporting the conflict. However, once he got to Washington, he was hoping that the Americans would be on the same page in providing aid to Ukraine. However, Republicans, as you mentioned, are divided on this issue. There are those who believe that President Biden should go all out and provide Ukraine with an additional $24 billion, something the Biden administration has asked Congress for. But then you have the majority of Republicans in the House, and, you know, the House is overrun by Republicans that don't see that this is a priority. Even some in the Freedom Caucus going as far as threatening a government shutdown. One of the conditions is to not provide any more aid to Ukraine. The American public, for the most part, polls are different, but they are war weary as well. They don't want their taxpayer money going to Ukraine on the one hand. On the other hand, those that believe that Americans should support Ukraine say that they want more accountability on how this money is being spent. And of course, that's something that has been very hard to follow, first in terms of weapons and then the humanitarian aid going overseas as well. So Zelensky met with lawmakers. He didn't meet with the lawmakers that he had to convince. So the question is this trip going to be void on the one hand, but then, he's at the Pentagon right now, and ultimately this trip is going to culminate with a visit at the White House as well.
Absolutely, indeed, Susan. Thank you very much indeed for joining us and getting us all those insights. It remains, in fact, to be seen as to what, in fact, unfolds at the White House there, as the Ukrainian president is, of course, in the United States of America to ask for more funds for the war. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.